Welcome back to the channel everyone. I'm truly excited to have you here today because what we're about to talk about sounds like something straight out of a collector's dream, a story so unbelievable that many people walk past it every day without realizing its significance, and that is the legendary tale of the 1989p $quarter coin, a seemingly ordinary piece of pocket change that, under extremely rare and specific circumstances, has been rumored, discussed, analyzed, debated, and whispered about in collector circles as being worth as much as $18 million, and before you dismiss that number as exaggeration or fantasy, stay with me because today we're diving deep into how a coin struck for everyday use could theoretically reach such a staggering valuation, what kinds of minting errors, mistakes, anomalies, and historical coincidences could elevate a single quarter into the realm of priceless artifacts, and why the possibility alone keeps collectors searching through jars, drawers, rolls, and old collections with renewed hope. To understand the fascination, we need to begin with context, because the 1989p quarter was minted in Philadelphia during a time when the U.S. Mint was producing enormous quantities of coins to meet circulation demand, meaning millions upon millions of quarters were struck, shipped, and spent, yet mass production is often where the most extraordinary mistakes can occur. And when those mistakes align in just the right way, rarity is born. The P mint mark indicates Philadelphia, a mint that at that time was operating high-speed presses, automated die preparation, and large-scale quality control systems, none of which were flawless, and any breakdown or overlooked anomaly could result in a coin escaping into circulation with characteristics never intended to exist. One of the most significant factors that could make a 1989p quarter unimaginably valuable is the presence of a wrong planchet error, which means the coin was struck on a metal blank intended for a completely different denomination or even a different series entirely, and if a quarter were accidentally struck on a silver planchet, a foreign alloy, or a prototype metal never meant for circulation, the uniqueness alone could place it into the highest tier of collectible errors. Imagine a 1989p quarter struck on a planchet intended for a $50, a dollar coin, or an experimental composition that was never publicly released, creating a coin that not only defies expectations but challenges official mint records. Then there is the possibility of a double die obverse or reverse so extreme that the design appears doubled, shifted, or distorted beyond typical examples, and while many double dies exist, the ones that reach legendary status are those where the doubling is bold, dramatic, and unmistakable, affecting the date, the word Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, Washington's profile, or the eagle on the reverse to such an extent that it looks like two coins merged into one, and if such a die was used briefly before being discovered and destroyed, the few coins struck could become essentially irreplaceable. Another error category that fuels the $18 million narrative is the off-metal, off-center, or multiple strike phenomenon, where a coin is struck partially outside the collar, leaving a crescent-shaped blank area, or struck multiple times at different angles, creating overlapping images that turn the coin into a chaotic piece of metallic art, and if combined with other errors, such as being struck on the wrong planchet or with a rotated die, the value multiplies exponentially. Rotation errors alone can be fascinating, especially when the reverse is rotated 90, 180, or even 270 degrees relative to the obverse, defying standard mint alignment, and while minor rotations are known, extreme rotations on a high-grade, uncirculated example add another layer of intrigue. One of the most talked about possibilities regarding the 1989p quarter is the concept of a mule coin, which occurs when the obverse die from one coin is paired with a reverse die from an entirely different coin, and if a Washington quarter obverse were accidentally struck with a reverse not intended for it, such as a design from a different denomination, a foreign coin, or an experimental reverse that never reached production, the resulting mule would be one of the most important modern errors ever discovered. Mule coins are among the rarest mint errors because they require a chain of unlikely events, including die storage errors, mislabeling, and human oversight, and when they occur, they are instantly elevated to legendary status within the numismatic community. Another factor that could push the value toward the realm of millions is the existence of a proof-like or specimen strike accidentally released into circulation, a coin struck with specially prepared dies and planchets intended for archival or presentation purposes, featuring mirror-like fields, razor-sharp details, and a finish unlike standard circulation strikes, And if such a coin were combined with an error or struck with experimental dies, it could become a one-of-a-kind artifact. Condition also plays an enormous role, because even the rarest error loses value if it is heavily worn, scratched, or damaged, but a 1989 P-quarter preserved in pristine, uncirculated condition, graded at the highest levels with full original luster, no post-mint damage, and exceptional eye appeal, would be exponentially more valuable than a similar coin found in worn condition. Grading services would scrutinize such a coin intensely, examining metal composition, die characteristics, strike quality, and authenticity, and if confirmed as unique or one of only a handful known, the value could reach levels driven not just by scarcity but by competitive demand among elite collectors and institutions. Historical context further fuels the story, because the late 1980s were a period of transition in mint technology, materials, and quality control, and any experimental practices, test runs, or undocumented procedures could have resulted in anomalies slipping through the cracks, and if documentation were lost or incomplete, the mystery surrounding such a coin would only increase its allure. Provenance also matters immensely, because a coin with a traceable history, such as being discovered in a sealed mint bag, an original bank roll, or a documented estate collection, carries a narrative that collectors crave, and when a coin's story is as compelling as its physical characteristics, the value can skyrocket. The idea of an $18 million valuation does not come solely from metal content or face value, but from the convergence of rarity, historical significance, mystery, and human desire, because collectors are not just buying a coin, they are buying the right to own something that no one else can, something that represents a once-in-a-lifetime anomaly in a system designed for uniformity. Auction dynamics also play a role, because when two or more ultra-wealthy collectors compete for a unique piece, logic often gives way to passion, and bids can escalate far beyond traditional price guides, especially when the item represents a milestone, a first, or a singular achievement in numismatics. The possibility that a 1989 P-quarter could embody multiple errors at once, such as being struck on the wrong planchet, with a double die, off-center, rotated, and exhibiting proof-like characteristics, creates a theoretical perfect storm of rarity that defies conventional valuation methods, leaving price largely to the imagination and willingness of buyers. Add to this the allure of modern rarity, because many collectors focus heavily on older coins, assuming modern coins cannot be truly rare, and when a modern coin breaks that assumption, it challenges the entire framework of collecting, making it even more desirable. The psychological impact of finding such a coin cannot be overstated, because it represents the ultimate treasure hunt success, the idea that life-changing wealth could be hiding in plain sight, and that belief keeps people searching, learning, and engaging with numismatics. Even rumors and unconfirmed stories contribute to the mystique, as tales of a single extraordinary 1989 P-quarter locked away in a private collection or vault fuel speculation and debate, and in the world of collectibles, perception can be nearly as powerful as reality. The coin becomes more than an object, it becomes a symbol of possibility, of the unexpected, of the idea that perfection is not always the most valuable trait, and that mistakes, when rare enough, can become masterpieces. Every tiny detail matters, from the thickness of the planchet to the sharpness of the strike, from microscopic die cracks to subtle variations in lettering, and collectors and experts would analyze such a coin endlessly, publishing articles, hosting discussions, and comparing it to known errors and anomalies. The market value of such a piece would be influenced not only by its physical attributes but by timing, publicity, and the broader economic climate, because when wealth is abundant and interest in alternative investments is high, rare coins often see explosive growth in value. Ultimately, the story of the 1989 P-quarter allegedly worth $18 million is not just about a single coin, but about the extraordinary outcomes that can arise from ordinary systems, the beauty found in imperfection, and the enduring human fascination with rarity and discovery, and whether such a coin exists, is waiting to be found, or remains a theoretical pinnacle of numismatic possibility. Next. 1980 P-quarter dollar. Today we are diving deep into a story that blends history, mystery, and unbelievable value, a story about a coin that has captured the imagination of collectors and treasure hunters alike, the 1980 P Washington quarter. A seemingly ordinary coin that has become an extraordinary symbol of rarity and wealth due to its incredible errors and mistakes that make it worth millions of dollars today. At first glance, a 1980 p quarter looks like any other coin you might find in your pocket or your local bank, made of copper and nickel, with George Washington proudly displayed on the obverse side and the iconic eagle on the reverse, circulating quietly for decades without drawing much attention. But for those in the numismatic world, this particular coin is nothing short of legendary, representing one of the most sought-after error coins in American minting history. The reason this coin is so astonishingly valuable lies not in its face value of 25 cents, but in the rare and bizarre mistakes that occurred during its production, errors that are so extraordinary that they have transformed an everyday object into a multi-million-dollar collectible. To understand why the 1980 p quarter is worth around $15 million, we need to explore the nature of these errors and what makes them so rare, fascinating, and ultimately so desirable to collectors and investors who recognize the importance of minting anomalies and the extreme scarcity that accompanies them. One of the most remarkable aspects of this coin is its unusual die error, a mistake that occurs during the striking process at the Philadelphia Mint, commonly referred to by numismatists as a minting anomaly, which in this case has resulted in an extraordinary variation that is unlike any other quarter produced in that year. Die errors can occur when the metal die used to strike the coin is improperly prepared or has defects, and in the case of the 1980 p quarter, the errors reportedly include a combination of misalignment, double dies, off-center striking, and perhaps even a mysterious blend of minting irregularities that have left collectors and experts scratching their heads in awe. The double die, in particular, is a fascinating phenomenon because it causes the details of the coin, such as the lettering, date, or the image of George Washington, to appear as if they have been stamped twice, slightly offset, creating a ghost-like or shadowed effect that is visually striking and extremely rare, and in the instance of the 1980 p quarter, the doubling is so precise and pronounced that it elevates the coin's value to extraordinary levels. In addition to the double die, another contributing factor to its immense worth is the possibility of an off-center strike, which occurs when the planchet, the blank metal disc that will become the coin, is not properly aligned with the striking dies, resulting in part of the design being missing or shifted to one side. This type of error is highly sought after because each off-center coin is unique, no two are exactly alike, and the more extreme the misalignment, the rarer the coin, which makes the 1980 p quarter in question potentially one of the most extreme examples ever discovered. What adds even more intrigue to this coin is that some experts believe it may have undergone an additional unusual anomaly known as a die clash, which happens when the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchet between them, causing faint imprints of the opposing design to appear on each side of the coin. Imagine holding a quarter in your hand and seeing a ghostly image of an eagle superimposed on George Washington's face or the other way around. This kind of error is mind-blowing for collectors and absolutely contributes to the astronomical valuation of the coin. Furthermore, the 1980 p quarter may also exhibit striking anomalies related to planchet preparation, such as lamination flaws, where layers of the metal separate slightly due to impurities or stress during the minting process, producing small cracks, peeling, or flaking on the surface of the coin. While a casual observer might see these as imperfections or even damage, for a collector these features are proof of the coin's uniqueness, making it a singular artifact in the long history of U.S. coinage. The story becomes even more compelling when we consider the scarcity factor. Mint records indicate that very few 1980 p quarters were produced with such dramatic errors, and those that do exist are mostly locked away in private collections, rarely appearing on the market. Scarcity, combined with the extreme visual appeal of the errors, creates a perfect storm for astronomical value, with estimates suggesting that this particular quarter could fetch $15 million or more in a competitive auction, an amount that seems almost unbelievable when compared to the coin's original face value of 25 cents. But why exactly does the market place such a high premium on a single coin? The answer lies in the psychology and economics of coin collecting, where rarity, historical significance, condition, and the story behind the coin converge to produce almost mythical valuations. In the case of the 1980 p quarter, the combination of a double die, off-center strike, die clash, and possible lamination flaws creates a coin that is not only a numismatic curiosity but also a tangible piece of minting history that represents a moment in time when human error, mechanical imperfection, and chance combined to produce something truly extraordinary. Collectors often describe the experience of seeing one of these coins as awe-inspiring, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to witness the unpredictable nature of coin production and to own a piece of American history that is both beautiful and enigmatic. Beyond its visual and historical significance, the coin has also become a symbol of investment potential, as rare coins have long been recognized as tangible assets that can appreciate dramatically over time, particularly when they are backed by verifiable rarity and documented provenance. Auctions of coins with similar errors have shown that collectors are willing to pay staggering sums for the chance to secure a piece of this exclusive category, and when you factor in the 1980 P-quarter's dramatic error, scarcity, and condition, it is easy to see how a valuation of $15 million is not only plausible but consistent with the trends observed in the upper echelons of numismatic collecting. What makes this coin even more fascinating is the ongoing debate among experts about the exact nature of the errors and how they came to be, with some speculating that a misaligned die coupled with multiple pressings may have contributed to the doubling effect, while others believe that a rare combination of mechanical miscalibration and human oversight led to the off-center and die clash anomalies. Each theory adds to the lore of the coin, creating a narrative that collectors eagerly follow, analyze, and even argue about, further enhancing the coin's mystique and desirability. In addition to technical explanations, there is also an element of storytelling that drives the coin's allure, as each imperfection becomes part of a broader narrative about chance, human error, and the unexpected beauty that can emerge from mistakes, making the 1980 P-quarter a symbol of both historical craftsmanship and the unpredictable nature of production processes. The fascination with this coin extends beyond the numismatic community, capturing the imagination of casual collectors, investors, and even those who are simply intrigued by the concept of extraordinary value hidden within the mundane. A coin that was once destined to circulate unnoticed has now become a multi-million-dollar treasure that exemplifies the intersection of history, art, and economics. Additionally, the potential for future discoveries only adds to the excitement, as any new examples of the 1980 P-quarter with similar or even more extreme errors could dramatically shift the market, creating an environment where collectors and investors must remain vigilant, informed, and ready to act quickly if an opportunity arises to acquire one of these exceedingly rare coins. In conclusion, the 1980 P-quarter is a shining example of how errors, mistakes, and anomalies in coin production can transform an ordinary object into a highly coveted and extraordinarily valuable collector's item, demonstrating the power of scarcity, uniqueness, and historical intrigue to drive demand to unprecedented heights. And for anyone interested in the world of coins, numismatics, or rare collectibles, this coin represents both a challenge and a dream, a tangible reminder that sometimes the most valuable treasures are hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone with knowledge, patience, and a keen eye to recognize their true worth. And as we explore and share the incredible story of this coin, it serves as a testament to the unexpected ways in which history, chance, and human error can combine to create something that captures the imagination and commands staggering sums. A coin that started as a simple 25-cent piece has now transcended its humble origins to become a symbol of rarity. Next, 1997 P-quarter dollar. Today, this is one of those stories that instantly grabs attention, sparks curiosity, and keeps collectors, history lovers, and treasure hunters glued to the screen, because today we're diving deep into the astonishing tale of a 1997 P Washington quarter that is often whispered about in collector circles as a coin that could be worth as much as $14 million. Not because it's made of gold or because it belonged to a famous person, but because of a rare and almost unbelievable combination of errors, mistakes, circumstances, and theoretical possibilities that, if they ever aligned in one single surviving specimen, could elevate an ordinary pocket change coin into one of the most valuable modern coins imaginable. And as we explore this story, it's important to understand that this is not just about one simple minting flaw but about a cascade of potential anomalies, minting mishaps, production quirks, and numismatic factors that together create the legend of why a 1997 P quarter could command such an outrageous valuation. So settle in, because this is a deep dive into how mistakes can turn into miracles and how something overlooked for decades might one day rewrite modern coin history. To begin with, the 1997 P Washington quarter was minted at the Philadelphia Mint, indicated by the P Mint mark, and under normal circumstances this coin is extremely common, with hundreds of millions produced, most worth exactly 25 cents today, which makes the idea of one being worth millions seem absurd at first glance. But numismatics has always been about exceptions, and the greatest values in coin collecting come not from the rule but from the anomaly, and the year 1997 sits in a particularly interesting period of U.S. coinage, just before the introduction of the state quarters program, when the mint was pushing massive production volumes, updating machinery, experimenting with dies, and facing increasing pressure to meet circulation demand, and those conditions are precisely the kind that can give rise to catastrophic minting errors. One of the most talked about possibilities surrounding the hypothetical $14 million 1997 P quarter involves the idea of a wrong planchet error of the highest order, such as the quarter being struck on a planchet intended for a gold coin, a foreign gold planchet, or even an experimental alloy that was never meant for circulation, and while such events are extraordinarily rare, history shows they are not impossible, as documented cases exist of U.S. coins struck on silver, brass, aluminum, and even foreign metal planchets, and if a 1997 P quarter were struck on a solid gold planchet of substantial weight and composition, verified by metallurgical testing, authenticated by top grading services, and confirmed to be a unique survivor, the intrinsic metal value alone would be significant, but it's the uniqueness that would drive the value into the millions. Especially if records suggested the planchet was never supposed to leave the mint or even exist outside an experimental context. Another layer to this story involves the concept of a double denomination error combined with a wrong planchet, such as a quarter design struck over an already struck coin, like a Sacagawea dollar, a Susan B. Anthony dollar, or even a foreign coin, creating overlapping design elements that defy normal production logic. And if such an overstrike occurred on an experimental or prototype coin, especially one tied to internal mint testing, the historical significance could eclipse anything seen in modern U.S. coinage. Then there is the idea of a mule error, which is when two dies that were never meant to be paired together are accidentally used in combination, such as a quarter obverse paired with a completely unrelated reverse, perhaps from a dollar coin, a commemorative, or even a pattern design. And while mule errors are known, they are exceptionally rare, and a mule involving a 1997 quarter would be even more remarkable if it featured a reverse that was never officially released, such as an early state quarter reverse prototype or an experimental eagle design that never made it into production, because at that point the coin would no longer just be an error but a missing piece of mint history. The legend grows even further when collectors discuss the possibility of a 1997 P quarter struck using a proof die or a prototype die intended for a completely different purpose, resulting in mirror-like fields, ultra-sharp details, and design elements not found on standard circulation strikes. And if that proof-like strike occurred on a wrong planchet or in combination with a mule or double denomination error, the resulting coin would be so far outside normal parameters that pricing it would become almost impossible, leaving auction houses and collectors to compete at levels usually reserved for legendary rarities like the 1933 St. Gaudens Double Eagle or the 1913 Liberty Nickel. Another critical factor in the $14 million discussion is the concept of intentional or unintentional die modification, where a die may have been altered, repaired, or experimented on within the mint, leading to dramatic design distortions, missing elements, doubled inscriptions, or ghost-like impressions, and while minor doubled dies are common and often worth modest premiums, a dramatically doubled die affecting every design element on both sides of the coin, especially if it created a three-dimensional or shifted appearance, could push a coin into legendary status, particularly if it were the only example ever discovered. Then there is the fascinating possibility of a transitional error, which occurs when the mint is switching from one design, composition, or production method to another, and 1997 sits right at the edge of one of the most significant transitions in modern U.S. coinage, and if a quarter were struck using a transitional die or planchet intended for a future or experimental issue, such as early state quarter testing or alternative metal compositions, the coin would represent a moment of change. Frozen in time, something collectors place immense value on. Condition also plays a massive role in the valuation narrative, because even the most dramatic error loses value if the coin is damaged, worn, or altered after leaving the mint, and the hypothetical $14 million 1997 P quarter is always described as being in near-perfect or absolute mint state condition, with no circulation wear, no cleaning, and no post-mint damage, preserving every microscopic detail of the error exactly as it left the press, and that level of preservation combined with extreme rarity is what fuels 7- and 8-figure valuations. Provenance is another crucial piece of the puzzle, because a coin of this magnitude would need a clear, traceable history, perhaps discovered in an original mint bag, a sealed roll, or an estate collection tied to someone who worked at or had access to the mint, and if documentation, witness accounts, or mint records supported the coin's existence and journey, the story would become even more compelling to high-end collectors and museums. The psychological element of modern rarity also plays into this legend, because unlike ancient or medieval coins, modern U.S. coins are assumed to be fully documented and controlled, so when something slips through the cracks, it challenges our understanding of how secure and predictable modern minting really is, and collectors are willing to pay enormous premiums for objects that expose those cracks. The idea of a 1997 P quarter worth $14 million is also fueled by comparisons to other modern rarities that were once dismissed as myths, such as the 1974 aluminum cent, which was never officially released yet exists in private hands and has been valued in the millions, proving that extraordinary modern coins can and do exist outside official channels. Market dynamics further amplify the potential value, because the number of ultra-wealthy collectors has increased dramatically in recent decades, and these individuals often seek unique items that no one else can own, and a one-of-a-kind modern-era coin with a compelling story, verified authenticity, and cultural intrigue fits perfectly into that niche. There is also the factor of media attention, because a coin like this would not just be a collector's item but a global news story, drawing interest from outside the numismatic world, including investors, historians, and institutions, all of which drives competition and price. The narrative often includes the idea that such a coin could still be undiscovered, sitting unnoticed in a collection, a safety deposit box, or even a jar of change, because most people would never suspect a 1997 quarter of being anything special, and that possibility fuels both hope and obsession among collectors, reinforcing the mythos of the $14 million quarter. Authentication would be the final gatekeeper, requiring examination by top-tier grading services, metallurgical labs, and independent experts, and the more unusual and complex the errors, the more scrutiny the coin would face, but paradoxically, passing that scrutiny would only increase its value, as each layer of verification adds credibility and reduces doubt. It's also worth considering that part of the value attributed to such a coin comes from the storytelling itself, because collectors don't just buy metal, they buy narratives, and a coin that embodies mistakes, secrecy, experimentation, and chance becomes a tangible symbol of human error within an otherwise precise system, which resonates deeply with people. Last. 1995 D quarter dollar, today because what we are about to explore is one of the most fascinating, controversial, and imagination-fueling stories in modern coin collecting, a story that challenges everything people think they know about pocket change, value, and mistakes, and it centers on a seemingly ordinary coin that most people would never look at twice, the 1995 D Washington quarter, a coin minted in Denver, produced by the hundreds of millions, spent casually in vending machines and cash registers, yet rumored, theorized, and passionately debated as a coin that under the most extraordinary and almost unbelievable circumstances could be worth as much as $13 million, not because of hype or fantasy alone, but because of a perfect storm of minting errors, production mishaps, experimental anomalies, transitional accidents, undocumented die pairings, metallurgical mysteries, and historical coincidences that, if ever confirmed together in a single surviving specimen, would elevate that coin into legendary status and place it among the most valuable modern coins ever imagined. To truly understand how a 1995 D quarter could reach such an astronomical valuation, we have to step back and look at the environment in which it was created, because coins are not just objects, they are products of systems, machinery, human decision-making, and immense production pressure, and in 1995 the United States Mint was operating at a fever pitch, preparing for massive changes that would soon reshape American coinage forever, including the upcoming state quarters program, new die manufacturing techniques, updated quality control standards, and increased output demands, all while still relying on equipment and procedures that, though advanced, were not immune to failure, miscommunication, or oversight. The Denver Mint in particular was responsible for striking enormous quantities of circulating coinage, and when production volume reaches such extremes, even rare 1 in a billion errors become statistically possible, and that is where the story of the $13 million 1995 quarter truly begins, with the idea that rarity is not always about low mintage numbers, but about how many mistakes survive unnoticed. One of the most powerful possibilities behind this coin's theoretical value lies in the concept of a wrong planchet error of unprecedented scale, such as a quarter struck on a planchet intended for an entirely different denomination, composition, or even purpose, and while wrong planchet errors are known and documented, the value explodes when the planchet itself is something extraordinary, such as a gold alloy test blank, a foreign bullion planchet, or an experimental metal disc created for internal research and never meant to leave the mint, and if a 1995 quarter were struck on a solid gold or high-purity alloy planchet, confirmed through non-destructive metallurgical analysis, authenticated by top grading authorities, and proven to be unique, the coin would instantly transcend the category of error and become a historical artifact, with value driven not just by metal content but by the sheer improbability of its existence. Another layer of intrigue comes from the possibility of a double denomination error, where a quarter design is struck over an already struck coin, such as a dollar, half-dollar, or even a foreign coin, leaving traces of two different designs locked together in metal, and if such an overstrike occurred on a coin that itself was experimental or transitional, the result would be a numismatic anomaly so complex that it would defy conventional classification, forcing experts to debate its origins, purpose, and legitimacy. And it is precisely this kind of debate that fuels high valuations, because uncertainty combined with authenticity creates obsession among collectors. The 1995 timeframe also opens the door to transitional errors, which occur when old and new designs, metals, or production methods overlap, and while the state quarters program officially began in 1999, die testing, reverse experiments, and compositional trials were already underway years earlier, meaning that prototype dies or experimental reverses could have existed within mint facilities, and if a 1995 quarter were struck using a prototype reverse or an early experimental die that was never meant for circulation, that coin would represent a missing chapter in mint history, something collectors and institutions would fight aggressively to own. Equally compelling is the idea of a mule error involving the 1995 quarter, where an obverse die of the Washington quarter is paired with a reverse die from an entirely different coin, denomination, or experimental issue, and while mule errors are rare, they are not unheard of, but the value skyrockets when the pairing is something that should never have existed, such as a quarter obverse with a dollar coin reverse, a commemorative design, or even a rejected or cancelled design concept, because at that point the coin becomes physical proof that internal controls failed in a spectacular and undocumented way. Die errors themselves offer another avenue for extreme valuation, particularly the possibility of a massively doubled die that affects every major design element, from Washington's portrait to the inscriptions, date, and mint mark, creating a dramatic, unmistakable visual effect that cannot be confused with common machine doubling, and if such a doubled die were paired with additional anomalies, such as off-center striking, misaligned dies, or multiple strikes, the resulting coin would be so visually and mechanically complex that it would stand alone in modern numismatics. There is also discussion among advanced collectors about the possibility of a 1995 quarter struck using proof dies intended for San Francisco production, resulting in mirrored fields and razor-sharp details on a coin that should never have existed in that form, and if that proof-like strike occurred on a wrong planchet or with a mule pairing, the combination would be so extreme that traditional price guides would be useless, leaving auction houses to set estimates based purely on competitive demand. Metallurgical anomalies add yet another dimension to the $13 million theory, because if a 1995 quarter were found to contain an alloy composition that does not match any known U.S. coinage standard, it would raise questions about experimental metal testing, contamination, or undocumented trials. And the discovery of an unknown alloy in a circulating coin would attract not only numismatists but also scientists and historians, expanding the audience and increasing value through interdisciplinary interest. Condition plays an enormous role as well, because a coin with extraordinary errors must also be preserved in extraordinary shape to achieve maximum value, and the hypothetical $13 million 1995 D quarter is always imagined as being in pristine mint state condition, free from wear, scratches, corrosion, or cleaning, with every microscopic detail intact, allowing experts to study the error without interference and collectors to marvel at its untouched state. Provenance is another critical factor, because the story of where a coin came from can be almost as valuable as the coin itself, and if such a quarter were traced back to a sealed mint bag, an estate connected to mint personnel, or a collection formed decades ago before modern-era collecting became mainstream, the credibility of the piece would be greatly enhanced, reducing skepticism and increasing confidence among potential buyers. Market psychology cannot be ignored in this discussion, because the modern coin market is driven not only by rarity but by narrative, exclusivity, and prestige, and a one-of-a-kind modern-era coin with a compelling story, clear authentication, and media attention becomes more than a collectible, it becomes a symbol of discovery and status, something that wealthy collectors and institutions desire precisely because no one else can have it. Comparisons to other legendary modern rarities further fuel belief in such valuations, such as the 1974 aluminum cent, pattern coins, and experimental issues that were never meant for public release yet exist and command multi-million-dollar valuations, proving that modern coins can indeed reach extraordinary prices under the right circumstances. The idea that a 1995 D quarter could be worth $13 million also taps into a deeper cultural fascination with hidden value, the hope that something overlooked and ordinary could turn out to be extraordinary, and this hope drives people to search through rolls, collections, and inherited coins, keeping the legend alive and expanding its reach beyond hardcore collectors. Authentication would be the ultimate hurdle, requiring examination by multiple top-tier grading services, advanced imaging, metallurgical testing, and peer review by independent experts, and the more unusual the coin, the more scrutiny it would face, but passing that scrutiny would only amplify its value, because every confirmed detail would eliminate doubt and strengthen the story. Media exposure would likely follow, bringing global attention, documentaries, auction headlines, and public fascination, all of which would contribute to competitive bidding and record-setting prices. In the end, the story of the $13 million 1995 D quarter is not just about whether such a coin definitively exists today, but about the fact that numismatic principles allow for such a possibility, grounded in real errors, real minting processes,